Hey, what's up friends? Shamrocked here with another quick guide. This guide is for the second boss in Court of Stars, Talixae Flamwreath. And this dungeon is this key is a 23 Tyrannical with the Spiteful and Quaking as the affixes, and Thundering of course. So this boss, or this dungeon in general, is known as like one of the easier dungeons, which is totally true. However, the second boss and the last boss can be a little bit tricky if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't manage your cooldowns properly. Especially the second boss, if you have a group that has lower DPS and the fight drags on, which sometimes it tends to do on higher Tyrannical keys, the boss is going to be doing like a ton of damage towards the end of the fight. So just be ready for that. I kind of think of this boss as sort of like a game of chicken with your cooldowns. Like you want to see how long you can hold your major cooldowns, because if you can hold them towards the end of the fight, and then, you know, like when the damage really ramps up, if you have those tools at your disposal, it'll make things a lot easier. That being said, you also don't want anyone to die before you get to that point. So it really just depends on how the group goes. Because of the nature of Court of Stars, you will have different buffs going to this, just depending on what you get for the dungeon. One of the best buffs you can get for this is probably the mana buff that the monks and the DKs can get. It's like that barrel of brew or whatever it is. That'll make your job a lot easier because you can kind of just cast without trying to be efficient. That being said, you may not have the luxury of getting that buff, so try to have mana pots on hand for this. And I also, like, if you're going to a higher Tyrannical key and mana is something you naturally struggle with, or you're nervous about this boss, just do yourself a favor, spec into Water Shield and Resurgence, or at least Mana Spring, just so you're not really fumbling towards the end here. Because if this fight, like I said, drags on, you're going to be casting everything that you have at your disposal, and you will run out of mana towards the end, so just be careful of that. Okay, general rotation I use for this boss is just always have Healing Rain down, cast Downpour if people have, you know, like 70-80% health or less, Chain Heal when I have high tides, even sometimes when I don't have high tides, Primordial Wave, basically on cooldown if people have enough damage going out, just because that's such an efficient heal for your mana. And then other than that, like I said, you just want to kind of save your cooldowns for the end. If you do need to pop a cooldown towards the first half of the fight, I would go with AG or maybe a Trinket or a Racial, something that's like 2 minutes or less of a cooldown. Just because if the fight does drag on, it will be up again towards the end. But you want to save like Healing Tide, Spirit Link, and Ascendance for, like I said, the second half of the fight, so that you can use those. That being said, you'll see I just popped Spirit Link there, and I would consider this a very early for that. But if you rewind a bit, it's just because somebody got really low health from Quaking, so I popped it to save them. My reaction time wasn't even that great though, so I honestly didn't even need to pop it, but I kind of panicked probably, so that's what happened there. Some other tips that I would say is use your Cap Totem, and if you're specting the Thundershock, use that as well to help out with the ads, especially on a week like this week where you have Quaking. Sometimes the ads will be spread out, and so you'll need to do whatever you can to keep them from casting. If they do cast, if they get a Firebolt off or like Drifting Embers, you will, like, someone will probably die, so you just need to do whatever you can to stop those if the DPS can't kill them quickly. Also, if you can help out with interrupts on the boss, if her cast gets off, it puts basically a permanent debuff on everyone that you can dispel, but because your dispel's on a cooldown, you can't dispel everyone at once, and I believe it either decreases the healing they take, or maybe it decreases their amount of health. I don't know, but it's bad news, so just be careful of that. Okay, so here's an example of the imps being spread out. This is only because of Quaking, but maybe, you know, something else happened in your group where this happens. So you'll see I pop a Cap Totem here as well as Thundershock to help out. Okay, so we're almost towards the end of the fight. I still have Ascendance, which is great. I would love to have Slink up as well, but like I said, I had to use it. I didn't have to, but I used it to help out with someone's Quaking. But if you can save those two, I would say, especially towards the end, even Healing Tide. I find I usually use Healing Tide towards the middle of the fight, though, just to kind of be more efficient, especially if you don't have that mana buff. I actually apologize. I should have taken a video when I don't have the mana buff, because it almost feels like cheating, to be honest, because I can just cast whatever I want. But if you do need to be efficient, like I said, save your chain heals for when they're to high tide. Use Primordial Wave and Downpour because they're very efficient to you know, do some AoE healing. Always keep Healing Rain down because it's just going to help damage. It'll help the fight go by faster. And that being said, try to get as much DPS in as you can at the beginning before the damage ramps up, because the faster this fight ends, the easier your life will be. And if the group has any DRs, like AMZ, Rally, anything like that, I would also let them know to use that towards the end of the fight as well, if they can hold it. But otherwise, this fight's, it's honestly, I would say it's pretty boring. Not in the sense that it's not difficult, but in the sense that you kind of just stand there and you're kind of like a turret. You're just pressing all your heal buttons. So yeah, stay calm, do the little dance, try to save your cooldowns, but other than that, just keep your standard AoE rotation, you know, Healing Tide, primarily waves, downpour, chain heal with high tide, and yeah, you should be totally fine. This boss seems a lot more stressful than it actually needs to be if you can plan and be efficient with what spells you're using. Anyways, if you find yourself in here on a Tyrannical, good luck, and have fun.